This story takes us back to 1994, back when cell phones weren't popular and we didn't have social media. It's the year the PlayStation came out. I'll Make Love to You by Boyz II Men, The Sign by Ace of Base, and I Swear by John Michael Montgomery were some popular songs. It's also the year the world lost a legend with the death of Kurt Cobain of Nirvana. Among the most popular movies were Forrest Gump, The Lion King, and Dumb and Dumber starring Canadian actor Jim Carrey. Frasier, The X-Files, ER, Friends, and Seinfeld were some of the top TV shows. Honestly, I miss a good sitcom. This was also the year that beloved Canadian comedian and actor John Candy died. In other popular news, serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer was killed in prison. And who could forget the infamous O.J. Simpson white Bronco car chase that was televised live on nearly every network? Who could also forget one of the biggest sports scandals in history when national figure skating champion Tonya Harding orchestrated an attack on her rival Nancy Kerrigan? On August 10, 1994, in downtown Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, Nick and Lisa Masee planned to meet an investor at Trader Vic's, a popular restaurant for stock traders and promoters. Nick was finally setting out on his own with Turbodyne Technologies, a VSC or Vancouver Stock Exchange startup, with which he hoped to join his high-rolling buddies in the big leagues. The promise of a big investor intrigued Nick, while Lisa remained skeptical, but supported him anyways. Nobody showed up to Trader Vic's that night, even though Nick had made reservations. Strangely, they were allegedly spotted just a few doors away at another restaurant, where Nick was sipping wine in a tracksuit and not looking like he had an important meeting at all. The next morning, Lisa called her work from Nick's cell phone to say she needed the next day off, which was Friday, but that she would be back to work on Tuesday. She then called Nick's business partner to let him know that they were going away for a few days, but that Nick would be in touch soon. The Masees haven't been heard from since, over 30 years ago. North Vancouver's biggest missing persons case is Nick and Lisa Masee's mysterious disappearance. Nick and Lisa met in 1984. She was his much younger hairdresser, and eventually they got together and married, a second marriage for them both. Nick was born in the Netherlands and had 2 adult kids from his first marriage, Nick Jr., who lived in Singapore, and his daughter Tanya, who lived in Holland. Nick and Lisa were known to hang out with the heavy hitters at the now defunct Howe Street Vancouver Stock Exchange, or the VSE. For years, Nick was the private banker for many of his VSE buddies. He had recently retired from the Bank of Montreal, or BMO, and his VSE buddies treated him well, a lot better than he could ever afford on his own. And Nick? Well, Nick, he loved that lifestyle. However, Nick and Lisa didn't have the kind of money that their friends did. Nick earned about $85,000 a year before he retired, and Lisa was still working as a hairstylist, so their income didn't compare to their rich friends. They owed $70,000 on their credit cards, and they had a heavily mortgaged house. Nick was 55 and Lisa was 39 when they disappeared. The couple was well known, like I said, in Vancouver's Howe Street crowd because Nick was the private banker for many brokers and promoters on the VSE. Nick regularly socialized with controversial VSE bigwigs like Murray Pezim, Harry Mole, Nelson Scalbania, and Herb Capozzi. And if you don't know who any of these people are, neither did I. So I googled them and got descriptors like wheeler and dealer, sleazeball, flamboyant, eclectic, and house traders who loved flaunting their money. Also, the first article I read about the VSE said that the VSE was famously called the scam capital of the world in 1989 by Forbes magazine. So make of those descriptors as you will, but I think you get the drift. Not the most up-and-up crowd. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about the stock exchange because I really don't at all. All I can tell you is that before the VSE merged in 1999 with the Canadian Venture Exchange, it was a standalone stock exchange and was known as, like I mentioned, the scam capital of the world. And here we're not talking about scams of a few $100s or even thousands. We're talking about scams of millions and millions of dollars. But back to Nick and his VSE buddies. They took him fishing, they flew him in their private jets, Nick stayed in their mansions, and he even attended Murray Pezim's wedding on a luxury yacht. However, despite their associations with the rich and powerful, the Masees were living way beyond their means. There was no way that they could have kept up with the VSE crowd. Their getaway was a timeshare in Maui. And living beyond their means, the couple often went to Hawaii, the Cayman Islands, and the Netherlands. I did read, though, that Nick was known to have had savings and was considered a, quote, sophisticated guy. He also looked like, I guess you would call, the stereotypical successful businessman. He was 5'7" and trim, with a tan, wearing gold jewelry, graying hair, blue eyes, and a pretty younger wife. Now, Nick and Lisa seemed to be happy and successful, but their friends did think, though, that before they went missing, they were acting strange. First, there was a trip to the Cayman Islands just a few months before they vanished. The trip came without warning, and they set up a bank account with $50,000 worth of stock while they were there. Besides that, they also drew up their wills. Especially concerning was the fact that Nick allegedly called his daughter, who lived in Holland, to say that he wouldn't be able to call her on her birthday. There was no explanation, nor did he say where he was. It was around August 9th when Lisa told a friend at work that a man from California had contacted Nick about a possible business deal. She said the man told Nick that they had met while he worked at BMO and that he was interested in investing in Turbodyne Technologies and that he had $10 million that he wanted to invest. Apparently, he promised Nick that he'd send a limo to his house the following evening, so on August the 10th, so that they could eat at Trader Vic's. So Nick went ahead and booked a table at Trader Vic's for August the 10th. We also know that Lisa wasn't entirely sold on this deal, as she told her friend from work she found it hard to believe that the businessman had $10 million that he didn't know what to do with, and the whole thing just seemed odd to her. During the evening of August the 10th, Nick called the restaurant, Trader Vic's, to let them know that they would be late. However, by 9:30, no one had shown up for the reservation, so Tommy Chang, who supervised the dining room and knew the Masees well, gave the table away. He would later say that Nick had called to say that they would be delayed, but he did not call back to cancel, which was really out of character for Nick, and Tommy Chang was surprised because Nick had always been punctual in the past. Lisa made her last 2 phone calls the following morning, the first to her work and the second to Nick's business partner. Lisa was known for being punctual, so when she didn't show up for work the following Tuesday, her boss called her sister, Loretta Leong. Her sister in turn checked their house. She found the house unlocked, the security system off, and their Chrysler LeBaron convertible was parked in the carport. There was no food left for the 17-year-old Persian cat, Spider, and just inside the front door, police found 2 plastic ties similar to handcuffs. Other than that, there were no signs of a struggle. In addition, the couple's passports were also found in their bedroom. However, the couple was nowhere to be found. They had simply vanished. Lisa's sister Loretta went ahead and filed a missing persons report with the North Vancouver RCMP, or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The missed reservation doesn't add up for me for a couple of reasons. I don't understand why they would call to say that they would be late, but not to cancel. Okay, I guess it's possible that Nick forgot, but I find it hard to believe not only because it was out of character, but because the couple was spotted just a few doors away from Trader Vic's. Like I said, I guess they could have forgotten, but it's odd. I think that if I were to be at a restaurant a couple of doors down from a place where I had a reservation, I might remember to cancel that reservation. So that just seems weird to me. Regardless, they were spotted at the Westin Bayshore at the Garden Lounge between 6:30 and 10:30 p.m. by at least 2 people who knew them. Apparently, Nick was wearing a jogging suit and Lisa looked like she had just gotten off work while they shared a bottle of wine. From the way that Nick was dressed, it didn't appear that they were meeting any businessmen. In my opinion, that means that the meeting was probably canceled. However, we do not know. According to Vancouver police, who investigate 5,000 missing persons cases every year, there was something different about this case. From the very start, there were many red flags, and they investigated this disappearance like a murder investigation. Even today, police don't know whether the Masees are intentionally missing or if they were murdered. In terms of the investigation, this is what we do know. Number 1, the police say that they don't have a crime scene, per se. Secondly, police found no record of a limo rental being sent to the Masees' address the night they were supposed to meet that mysterious business investor. Furthermore, the Masees' bank accounts have not been touched since they disappeared. In addition, the couple set up bank accounts and drafted their wills in the Cayman Islands months before they disappeared. Most of what we think we know, aside from those facts, is actually speculation. And this speculation mostly revolves around Nick's involvement with several VSE members. And that being said, I don't think that you can tell Nick and Lisa's story without talking about their various VSE involvements. Nobody knows whether any of these connections played a role in their disappearance, though. Despite the intense police investigation, Nick's son also hired a private investigator, Ozzy Caban, to locate his father. And yes, if you have listened to my case on Cindy Jones, this is the same private investigator. And I had no idea until I started reading about this case and thought it was a freaky connection. Now that doesn't mean anything, I don't mean it that way, but I was just not expecting two cases that I've looked into to have the same PI. Months after the disappearance, Caban traced $100,000 in a bank account belonging to the Masees in the Cayman Islands. I don't know if this is the same bank account that they opened a few months before they vanished, or if it's a different account. But if it is the same one, someone added more money because they apparently only opened it with $50,000. Now, Caban believes the couple is alive and living a good life. He believes the Masees were running from something. He notes that the day before the couple went missing, Nick had attended a funeral and was distraught, saying that he would leave town. Ozzy Caban said that he was not only looking into connections on Howe Street, but also the Dutch community, including Fred Hoffman, a VSE promoter who ended up on the RCMP's most wanted list. He was a fellow Dutchman who Nick introduced to members of the Vancouver Dutch community. He took many seniors and church parishioners to the cleaners and disappeared with $10 million of their stolen life savings. Just 3 years prior to the Masee's disappearance, he had disappeared in April of 1991. He had fled to Tasmania where he lived a lavish lifestyle. He remarried and claimed to be of Dutch royal descent. And apparently old tricks die hard because he was scamming seniors and other investors until he was caught in 2003 and sentenced to 8 years in jail. As of 2006, he was fighting extradition to Canada, and I couldn't really find out what happened there, but I really didn't spend a whole lot of time looking into it either, so hey, if you do know, please let me know. That's not the only thing about Nick and Fred Hoffman. Nick referred clients to Hoffman while he worked at the Bank of Montreal. Here, we can assume what Hoffman did with their money. One example is anesthesiologist Quentin Johnson, who was one of Nick's referred clients. Apparently, Hoffman ripped him off for the tune of $3 million. In a CBC News report, Caban said that maybe Quentin felt that Nick might have had something to do with his stolen money. However, since Nick's disappearance, Caban had not been able to contact Quentin Johnson, at that time at least. I did not find any further reports on Quentin in relation to Nick and Lisa. In addition, the missing Masees have not been found in Tasmania where Fred Hoffman fled. Ozzy Caban believes not only that the couple is alive, but that someone out there knows far more than they have revealed. Like always, someone knows something. Despite not working directly with Caban, police have investigated the Masees' finances and worked with international police forces to locate them, all without success. According to police, the couple also did not have any known enemies. According to the RCMP, Gord Reed said, quote, "This case is a head-scratcher. I've got missing people that I assume are murdered because they are not the kind of people who would be able to disappear, but the Masees could. He was a sophisticated guy. They both had passports from other countries. They had lived around the world. He understood international banking, and they had some money stashed aside." So Nick left his children, Nick Masee Jr. and Tanya, confused and heartbroken in the wake of his disappearance. In 2019, the siblings and the North Vancouver RCMP held a press conference to seek new information. They announced that they were increasing the reward money from $25,000 to $50,000. Quote, "Perhaps the time has gone by would allow someone to come forward now that otherwise might have remained silent in the past," said Nick Masee Jr. Quote, "There's the logical part that tells you that they can't be in hiding, and there's even a part in your heart that wants them to still be living," said Tanya. But the facts of the case have not led investigators to conclusively determine whether the couple was kidnapped, murdered, or the victims of some other crime. But the police do believe that the couple died as a result of a criminal act. Police reported at the time of this press conference that there were no new leads, and despite their appeals for help, no one has come forward to assist in finding the couple. Previously, Nick Jr. has been given a lie detector test claiming that his father has not spoken to him, in which Nick did actually pass this test. The problem with thinking the couple was murdered, says Ozzy Caban, is that there are no bodies. If it had been a professional hit, there would have most likely been bodies to send a message to others. If it's about money, where is the money trail? Murray Pezim previously told CBC that he didn't know if what had happened to the Masees was in connection to the VSE, but he thought whatever did happen had to do with money. According to Herb Kabosi, another of Nick's clients, Nick was as straight as an arrow. Now, Nick's children believe their father is dead and petitioned the BC Supreme Court in 2001 for him to be declared deceased. His daughter said that her father was normally a very open person who, quote, "enjoyed sharing details of what was happening in his life and work with others. However, in the 6 months leading up to his disappearance, he became extremely guarded about his life and in particular his work, and he seemed worried about his safety." So whatever did happen to the Masees, they did not leave any trace behind. In a 2014 CBC News rerun of a 1995 report, it was stated that the couple didn't have what you would call a large circle of friends, but what friends that they did have were not saying much of anything. They were being strangely silent about what they might know. Walter Davidson, a former social credit MLA and Speaker of the House, said he wouldn't get involved because he feared for his life. Strangely, he had left a message on the Masee's answering machine just a few days after the couple went missing, saying, quote, "If they'd been kidnapped, press 1. And he allegedly told a reporter that he thought that they were fish food. Lisa's sister and cousin were her closest friends, but allegedly both have provided minimal cooperation with investigators. Lisa made her last calls from Nick's phone from Bowen Island cell towers, which is a 20-minute ferry ride from Vancouver. According to the telephone company, those calls could have originated anywhere from Point Grey, which is a neighborhood in Vancouver, and the Sunshine Coast, which is a 180-kilometer stretch of coastline on the southwest corner of mainland British Columbia. I just want to jump back into the VSE again because Nick was so involved with many of the VSE heavy hitters who were also in turn involved in some pretty big scams. And as I mentioned, Nick was the private banker for many of these guys, and they treated him well, and he made it known to them that he enjoyed that lifestyle, and he was also known to invest in some of his clients' deals. However, after Nick's time on House Street, the VSE became notorious for equity market fraud, in which investors were misled into investing in high-risk ventures with the promoters misusing the funds. In its heyday, the VSE was Canada's third largest stock exchange, but in reality, it was no more than a legalized gambling joint, where investors actually lost tremendous amounts of money a lot of the time. And Nick, he had ties to many of those that were involved in these high-price scams on the VSE. Is it those ties and surrounding rumors that have left us wondering, were they murdered, or did they run off to escape something? Among the biggest players on the VSE was Harry Mole. During his 2 decades on House Street, he promoted many shady companies, including Pine Ridge Capital, which inflated and deflated with disastrous results. And as a result of this company's implosion in 1992, the government took another hard look at the VSE. Harry Mole was kicked out of the exchange and then took up residence in the Grand Cayman Islands. Remember that Nick and Lisa went to the Cayman Islands not long before they vanished. Maybe that means nothing, but maybe it actually means something. Murray Pezim was another of Nick's clients, and some say probably the most controversial promoter to hit the VSE. Nick was also the banker and tennis partner of Nelson Skalbania, and he was known as a flamboyant promoter on the VSE. He was always in the news, and he was best known for signing a then 17-year-old Wayne Gretzky to the Indianapolis Racers of World Hockey Association. He was definitely a high roller, having owned his own private jet, yacht, the Montreal Alouettes Football Club, the Vancouver Canadians Baseball Club, and the Edmonton Oilers Hockey Club. When Nick and Lisa went missing, Skalbania was up on charges for stealing $100,000 from a former business associate's trust fund. Now, Nick was scheduled to testify as a witness for the prosecution, even though it's been reported that he was only a minor witness and that the police do not believe that the court proceedings against Skalbania were connected to the Masee's disappearance. However, who knows? Before he disappeared, Nick was banking that his new venture as a director of a sketchy VSE startup called Turbodyne Technologies would launch him into the big leagues. As with so many other VSE startups though, ultimately this one also turned out to be a scam. And there are some people who find it very hard to believe that Nick, with his background, would not have known that. And then there's this. Terry Gould, an investigative reporter for Vancouver magazine, who claimed in 1995 that Nick was the money man behind a $110 million illegal arms deal with Don Shrury, an old colleague from the VSE. And I'm sure I pronounced his last name wrong. Anyway, allegedly, Don met with Terry Gould on August 6 to discuss the arms deal, which forms the basis of Gould's article, Bank Error, written about 1 year later. So on August 9th, Nick had attended the funeral of Glenn Hyatt, a well-known business and community leader. Nick and Hyatt were both BC Ballet benefactors, and newspaper reports indicate that Nick was visibly upset. On the same day, around 4:30 p.m., Don Shrury unexpectedly passed away from a heart attack. Now, this Don Shrury allegedly always carried a briefcase with him, and the briefcase allegedly is where he kept the arms deal's documents. And apparently, many people after he died were worried about the whereabouts of that briefcase. Then the mysterious investor calls Nick. It's then at work that Lisa discusses this mysterious investor with her colleagues. The California investor calls again, requesting a reschedule for later that evening, so Nick calls Trader Vic's and reschedules for 8:30 p.m. I also read 8, so I'm not sure actually if it was for 8 or 8:30. I've read both. I want to go with 8:30. Regardless, nobody showed up for that dinner, and there was no call to cancel. So what happened? Several theories have been thrown around. One theory is that Nick and Lisa disappeared themselves because they either owed money, Nick had embezzled money, or maybe Nick knew too much about something. The other theory is that Nick and Lisa were killed for all the possible aforementioned reasons. And it's not completely out there to think that the disappearance did have something to do with Nick's involvement in the VSE. Organized crime, drug lords, biker gangs, and arms dealers were among the sources of much of the money for the VSE. In fact, many people associated with the VSE scene on Howe Street went missing and were murdered during the 1980s and 90s. One example is the VSE stockbroker and Hells Angels associate Ray Janetti, who was found shot in the head in his own home in 1990. So were the Masees involved in a scam and had to be taken care of? Did Nick know about shady money deals and he needed to be silenced? Could they have been pulling a scam themselves and ran off with their money? There's also something suspicious about their recent trip to the Cayman Islands, where they opened a bank account and prepared their wills. It is also very suspicious that just a day after Nick's supposed colleague in a $110 million illegal arms deal dies, and people are in a frenzy to locate this suitcase that he was known to carry, that contained the paperwork of the weapons deal. And then Nick gets a call from a mysterious investor. Did the investor think that Nick had the briefcase? Was the briefcase ever found? Did the briefcase even exist? Initially, rumors spread that the couple was kidnapped. They were in witness protection or had run away, but police believe that they were murdered. There is some evidence that the Masees did not leave voluntarily, as Lisa was about to celebrate her 40th birthday soon, and her work colleagues had planned a weekend getaway in Whistler, BC. As well as that, she was to be the bridesmaid in her cousin's wedding. Unsubstantiated rumors started flying that Nick had guaranteed Harry Mold's gambling debts, and those debts were sold to a local biker gang. A variation of that theme went that Nick may have deliberately or accidentally gotten involved in laundering a motorcycle gang's drug money. Then there's the Cayman Islands, where Nick and Lisa visited not long before they disappeared. Disgraced VSE promoter Harry Mold had taken up residence in the Cayman Islands himself. In addition, there is also the theory that the couple is hiding on the Sunshine Coast, and that theory is based on phone records, the last calls that Lisa made on Nick's phone that came from the Bowen Island repeater. However, the telephone company says the calls could have come from anywhere from Point Grey to the Sunshine Coast. But then there's the 2 plastic ties that were found just inside the front door to their home. Could these ties have been a red herring, or were they evidence of foul play? And if the couple just took off, would they have really left their beloved cat behind with no food and to not be found for God knows how long? There has been no sign of the couple for 3 decades. Police believe they were murdered, and I think if you consider just a few things, you might agree. They left their beloved cat with no food and not to be found for God knows how long. And would Nick really just abandon his children? Yes, of course those things are possible, but not likely. People do sometimes, though, simply walk away from their lives, but at the end of the day, we simply do not know, and like always, somebody knows something, and until they choose to speak, I don't think we will ever really know what happened to Nick and Lisa. Anyone with any information about Nick and Lisa Masee are asked to contact the North Vancouver RCMP investigators at 604-985-1311. Thank you for taking the time to listen. So I've been working on trying to get this podcast more up to date and giving it more of a social media presence. So please do look it up on Facebook and Instagram as Unjust Crimes. I've also been working on creating a website, which is quite the work in progress, so keep tuned for updates on that. I've also been asked many times in the past how people can donate, which I have to say is pretty amazing that anyone would want to do that, so I've decided to add a PayPal link to my YouTube channel. You can find it on my channel's main page, and I just want to say to anyone that may want to donate, man, thank you so much. In the meantime, please do subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. And until next time, stay safe out there.